Season 2 of 1923 has finally reached its explosive finale. But make no mistake, this isn't just the end of another chapter. This is the emotional conclusion of a story that has gripped us across years and continents. From the dusty plains of Montana to the colonial streets of Africa and the battle-scarred fields of Europe, it's a saga that has tested every fiber of the Dutton family's will to survive. 1923 delivered not only drama, but also one of the most intense, soul-shaking journeys we've ever experienced within the Yellowstone universe. It was a story of unbreakable love and devastating loss, of power, vengeance, and sacrifice. However, a new unspoken mystery surfaced as the credits rolled. Because hidden in those closing moments, subtle but undeniable, was a clue, a whisper, a spark that could ignite the next chapter in the Dutton legacy. Something that challenges everything we thought we knew about how this story ends. Could this truly be the final curtain call for this generation of Duttons? Or are we standing at the edge of a much bigger story yet to unfold? What actually transpired in those final eerie frames? What secrets were buried in plain sight? And more importantly, what do they mean for the future of this iconic family and the entire Yellowstone franchise? Get ready, because what's coming next might just rewrite everything. Let's work through it all together. The conclusion of Season 2 of 1923 was not simply a conclusion. Rather, it was a freight train-sized tsunami of emotions, revelations, and heartbreak. In the final 2 hours, the series tried to tie up nearly every storyline it had carefully woven over 2 sprawling seasons. Furthermore, when I say it tried, I mean that it hurled resolution after resolution at us like a storm we weren't quite ready for. It was bold. It was beautiful. It was utterly devastating. At times, it felt like the writers took every ounce of emotional weight they'd been building and dropped it on us all at once. I wept, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Not 1 or 2 tears. We're talking full-on, 40 minutes of heart-wrenching, soul-emptying grief. I also know I wasn't the only one. The heartbreak was raw. The stakes were through the roof. And here's the kicker. Many of the fan theories we'd clung to for months came true one by one. On paper, it should have been perfect, a satisfying conclusion to a story that had taken us from blood-soaked African battlegrounds to the frozen loneliness of Montana. A journey that cost lives, love, and legacies. But let's not pretend everything landed the way it should have. Because even as the credits rolled, something just didn't feel right. Something felt rushed, compressed, as if the promise of an emotional payoff was crammed into a small space, making the most powerful moments appear undercooked. It seemed as though the show raced to the end without pausing to allow us to fully experience, think about, or even breathe. Take Spencer, for example. The man we were led to believe was the beating heart of the show's central arc, the prodigal son on a hero's journey. His return to Montana was supposed to be the moment everything changed. The moment the Duttons fought back, reclaimed their legacy, and secured the future of their land. But what exactly did we get? A bar brawl. A shot to Donald's head. 5 bodies. No grand strategy. No masterstroke. Just chaos and carnage. Jacob, the battle-hardened, stoic Jacob, couldn't have done that on his own. Or hell, couldn't the Duttons have hired 3 extra cowboys with good aim and gotten the same result? This isn't about doubting Spencer as a character. Far from it. He's one of the most layered, tortured, compelling figures in the entire Yellowstone universe. We've seen him broken, rebuilt, and reshaped by war, grief, and love. But after all that, after the ocean crossings, the bloodshed, the distance, the loss of his wife, the demons he fought inside and out, was this really how his arc was meant to end? A flash of violence and then silence? And that's the real question, isn't it? Was the journey worth it? Or did we just watch another Dutton story run out of time and space before it could truly deliver on its promise? 1923 gave us moments of brilliance, unforgettable characters, jaw-dropping landscapes, as well as some of the franchise's most affecting scenes. We were left wondering, however, whether this was a grand finale or merely a hasty farewell when the dust settled. Let's break it all down, because there's more to this ending than meets the eye. It didn't roar if this was supposed to be the big climax. It whimpered. Apparently, there are no consequences for such actions in this universe, and we're supposed to be fine with it. I don't know about you guys, but that didn't sit right with me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not mad at how things ended. I always wanted Spencer to kill Donald. I always wanted him to be the one who saves the ranch. But I think the journey to that end should have been more complicated, more challenging, more worth the wait. However, please let me know your thoughts on it. The fact that Spencer is alive and well, ready to take on yet another season of the show, or even a brand new prequel series, was the most significant outcome of all this. However, his journey is likely to be lonely, which is unfortunate. Let's be honest, if I asked you what left the worst taste in your mouth after watching the 1923 Season 2 finale, I guarantee most of you would yell the same thing: Alexandra's death. Additionally, none of you are to blame. After everything she endured, the shipwreck, the separation from Spencer, the endless miles across oceans and deserts, the trauma of war, the constant fight to survive, you'd think the woman earned a soft, peaceful ending. Something that honored her spirit. Something that acknowledged the fierce love and loyalty she showed. However, she receives one of the most heartbreaking and soul-draining farewells in the entire Yellowstone universe. And for what? To say I was heartbroken would be an understatement. That moment didn't just sting, it shattered me. The sheer weight of it all made my eyes soar, my chest tightened, and my jaw hit the floor. Alexandra was not just another person he liked. She was the hope of the series. She stood for change, freedom, and perseverance. She was the symbol of what Spencer was fighting for. And to have her stripped away like that, it wasn't just sad. It felt cruel. And yes, I get it. Taylor Sheridan is a master of tragedy. He thrives in the realm of sacrifice, pain, and generational wounds. But at this point, it feels like he's made a personal mission out of denying us closure. In his world, happy endings are myths. Every love story ends in failure. The last glimmer of peace has vanished. Sheridan seems to think that the past was only filled with misery and loss. But you know what? That narrative is getting old and exhausting. I will proudly pass away on this hill. Spencer and Alexandra ought to have a happy ending. They should have traveled together to Montana. They should have stood on the Dutton land together, weathered but unbroken, ready to raise the next generation. That would have been the emotional reward the audience earned. But instead, we got a tragedy that felt like it was pulled from an early draft. A conclusion that prioritizes shock value over satisfying storytelling. The story now feels incomplete and uneven as a result. One of the Yellowstone series' most compelling arcs, Spencer's, was stripped of its emotional payoff. Alexandra's legacy reduced to a headstone. And once again, we're left clinging to hope for another spin-off or season to stitch together the emotional wounds this finale left behind. The baby is the next thing. Let's talk about that. A premature newborn surviving in the 1920s with minimal medical care? Okay, we can believe it if it serves a dramatic purpose. But asking Cara Dutton, an aging woman who has already given every ounce of her strength to hold the family together, to now raise that child? It's not just unrealistic, it's unfair. Cara ought to relax, not be held accountable. Peace, not diapers. That entire moment felt like a narrative reach, one that made me stop and wonder, is this really the direction we're taking this story? I mentally checked out. I had to. Otherwise, I would have screamed. And yet, despite all the wreckage, all the disappointment, there's still a flicker of hope glowing at the edge of this broken horizon. Because we already know more is coming. The work on the next chapter has already begun. And I'm talking about 1944. No, this isn't just another prequel thrown at us to fill time. It's essentially 1923's unseen third act in disguise. It is the missing link, the link that connects Spencer's unfinished legacy to the Dutton family dynasty in Yellowstone today. And here's where things get really interesting. The events of Spencer's enigmatic future, the widowed woman he marries, the child he has with Alexandra, but never raises, will finally be revealed in 1944. For no good reason, Sheridan withheld those specifics from us. There's purpose behind the pain. In fact, some fan theories suggest that Spencer's child, born from this second, lesser-known relationship, might be the direct ancestor of none other than Jamie Dutton. Let that sink in. Do you recall when Garrett informed Jamie that the ranch was his inheritance and that it belonged to him from birth? That assertion gains a whole new dimension if Jamie is descended from Spencer's illegitimate bloodline. Jamie is a Dutton, but not in the way anyone expected. That would imply that we have been watching not just a family drama, but also a civil war that is slowly taking place between legitimate and illegitimate parties. A war for identity, legacy, and control. If Sheridan pulls this off, we're not just looking at a compelling storyline. The most emotionally complex arc in the entire Yellowstone universe is up for grabs right now. And don't worry, I'll be breaking down that theory in a full upcoming video. Make sure you're subscribed and ready for a deep dive if you want to learn how Jamie's roots truly connect to Spencer and the tangled Dutton family tree. But before we wrap up this whirlwind, let's talk about a different injustice that still terrifies me. Elizabeth and Jack. After Spencer and Alexandra, they were easily the second most promising, emotionally rich couple in 1923. And Sheridan did them dirty, no exaggeration. Jack's death was practically an afterthought. No emotional weight. No family mourning. Just gone. And Elizabeth? Vanished from the storyline like she was never even there. This was a woman who gave up everything: her dreams, her security, her identity, just to stand beside Jack and the Dutton name. And how did they repay her? With silence. Her arc had so much potential to explore loss, resilience, motherhood, and healing. Instead, it was removed, similar to a subplot that was removed during editing. And that's the real tragedy of 1923's finale. It wasn't just painful. It forgot. It forgot the women who held the story together. It forgot the arcs it promised to fulfill. And it forgot that, for the audience, emotional payoff matters more than plot convenience. So here we are picking up the pieces, trying to find meaning in the pain, and hoping that 1944 doesn't just continue the story, but finally honors it. Let me know in the comments, do you think Alexandra deserved better? Was Jack's arc done justice? Or are we watching a franchise that's starting to lose its emotional compass? I want to hear your thoughts because this story isn't over. Not in the slightest. Sheridan has a habit of creating incredible female characters only to throw them into the abyss without justice. And I'm tired of it. We deserved more. They deserved more. Comment below if you think 1944 will redeem Spencer's legacy. Or will it only exacerbate the pain? And what are your thoughts on Elizabeth and Jack? Are they entitled to better? Because one thing's for sure, there's still so much left to uncover in this ever-twisting saga of the Dutton dynasty. I know that many of you don't like Elizabeth, but let's be fair and say that this woman did everything she could to survive. She even killed someone for the ranch. What more could she have done? I genuinely have no idea. Despite all this, Cara didn't even give her a hug at the end. Instead, she treated Elizabeth as if she had betrayed the family and basically ignored all of her efforts. Although Cara was, in a sense, granting Elizabeth permission to continue her life after Jack, her demeanor and manner were so cold and heartless that I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sadness for Elizabeth. In 1923, one of the most heartbreaking and frankly infuriating events occurred during a conversation rather than a death or betrayal. A single conversation where Cara, the matriarch of the Dutton family, with a few words, they casually dismissed everything Elizabeth had endured. Cara implied that Elizabeth would forget Jack, forget the ranch, and move on with her life as if none of it ever mattered. As if Elizabeth hadn't bled for this land. as if she hadn't loved Jack with every fiber of her being. Let's be honest, that moment stung. It felt like a betrayal, not just of Elizabeth's character, but of the entire journey she went through, one that fans invested in deeply. This wasn't some summer fling or temporary crush. Elizabeth literally became a woman on that ranch. She bore the physical and emotional scars of a life that most couldn't handle for a single day. She survived a wolf attack, took life-altering vaccines, and stood by Jack through war, loss, and chaos. She suffered a miscarriage in silence. Nevertheless, despite everything, she never lost hope for their future. And how did they repay her? With a snide comment that made it sound like she was just a naive girl who would get over it. Cara, of all people, should have known better. She should have seen Elizabeth not as a fragile outsider, but as someone who earned her place in the family through blood, sweat, and resilience. What makes this worse is the sheer hypocrisy of what follows. We hear Elsa say, "Spencer never forgot Alexandra," a few seconds later. The narrative provides Alexandra with a lasting noble memory. Spencer gets to mourn her forever, and it's treated with reverence. But Elizabeth? She is ignored, as if her love story were insignificant. Why does Alexandra get immortalized, while Elizabeth is erased? Make it make sense. However, the complete silence regarding Elizabeth's pregnancy is perhaps the most egregious offense, and it continues to enrage fans. Cara didn't so much as acknowledge the unborn child. She never once mentioned welcoming Jack's child into the family, or remembering him in this new life. Nothing. The fact that Elizabeth is carrying a Dutton is not even mentioned. And for a family so obsessed with legacy and bloodlines, that silence was deafening. The Duttons are known for protecting their own, for drawing blood over legacy, and yet, when it came to Elizabeth and her child, they looked the other way. It raises a chilling question: was Elizabeth ever truly one of them? Or was she always going to be an outsider in their eyes? The only possible explanation, and it's one fans are already speculating on, is that Taylor Sheridan is playing the long game. That Elizabeth and Jack's child isn't being ignored, but reserved for something bigger. Which brings us to the forthcoming sequel series, The Madison. From what we know, this series will follow a family from New York, not the Duttons who somehow end up inheriting land in Montana. It seems likely that Elizabeth and Jack's ancestors are the members of this outside family. Now, just stop and really think about it. Imagine a lost child who was born in a heartbreaking situation, raised far from the ranch, and devoid of the Dutton name. Left to grow up in the shadows of a legacy they never even knew they carried. This child, cast away from the Yellowstone, grows up distant from the land that should have been theirs by birthright. But generations later, that child's bloodline comes full circle. Their grandchildren, unknowing heirs, return to Montana, drawn back by fate, by history, by something in their very bones. Then, all of a sudden, everything works. That would be Taylor Sheridan's final twist, demonstrating that legacy always returns home, no matter how many names change or secrets are buried over time. Because the Dutton name, it can be erased from paper. But blood from Dutton? That can't be outrun. Following Elizabeth's disappearance, there was more to the cold silence than just emotion. It could have been a deliberate act of narrative misdirection rather than a writing flaw. A quiet, intentional way to bury a secret so deep that not even the audience would see it coming. And maybe the Madison, yes, that mysterious project rumored to be in development, isn't just another Yellowstone spin-off. Maybe it's Elizabeth's revenge. The redemption of her child. The ultimate revelation that, despite the Duttons' efforts to forget her, her legacy would not die. And what an important message that would convey, that there is always a way back to the truth. That no matter how the Duttons tried to rewrite the story, history writes itself in blood. So, tell me, did you also experience that pain? Did you feel the same way I did when Elizabeth vanished? And do you at all think that the Madison might carry on the legacy that she and Jack left behind? Because this is how you do it if Sheridan truly wants to connect the Yellowstone universe to combine every storyline, every timeline, and every heartbreak into a single masterpiece. One day, the legitimate and forgotten sides of the Dutton bloodline will meet. Maybe not with guns and cattle wars, but with revelations. Utilizing inheritance. With a question that's haunted this family for generations: who truly deserves the land? And while I absolutely love the poetry of that idea, I won't lie. I'm still furious at the way Elizabeth was discarded like a background prop. The way her grief was glossed over. Her potential story arc thrown away like a first draft. More was due to her. She deserved a voice. A record. A concluding chapter deserving of her sacrifice. And until we see that justice on screen, I'll keep banging this drum. Now hearings get even more reals. Worthy according to Variety, 19.23 is officially over there, won't be a traditional season 3. That chapter has closed. But don't lose hope. Because the journey isn't ending, it's evolving. It continues right up until 1944. And based on what we know so far, Spencer will once more take center stage. Even better, Brandon Sklenar himself recently gave the impression that he is prepared to reprise the role. That means not only is Spencer coming back as a character, we might see him played by the same actor. And that's huge. 1944's emotional weight will come from that continuity. That's what will carry the unresolved grief, the unspoken truths, the buried stories, all of it into the next generation. Make sure to like and follow us for more Yellowstone universe-related weekly updates, discussions, and analysis. Meanwhile, the video on the screen might also interest you.